There's a legend about this motorcycle. They say the factory kept adding metal to the frame, 3 pounds at a time, wherever it broke in racing, until, finally, it simply stopped breaking. This is the matchless G80, one cylinder, 500 cubic centimeters, a simple, thumping British single. And yet it became one of the most feared and respected off-road machines in the world, the bike to beat in the brutal deserts of California. Its story doesn't begin on a racetrack. It begins in war. In the mud and chaos of the Second World War, where a matchless single earned a reputation for surviving everything the battlefield could throw at it. From that military toughness came a civilian legend, a machine so overbuilt, so relentlessly durable, that riders trusted it to carry them across the harshest terrain on Earth and bring them home again. This is the story of the matchless G80, how a wartime workhorse became Britain's toughest single, dominated American desert racing, and earned a reputation as one of the most unbreakable motorcycles ever built. First, the name. Matchless was one of Britain's oldest motorcycle makers, founded in 1899, and it made history early. In 1907, Charlie Collier won the very first Isle of Man TT on a Matchless. Racing was in its blood. The company built exotic machines too, like the Silverhawk, a narrow-angle V4. But its real strength was solid, dependable engineering. That reputation would matter enormously when war came to Europe. By 1938, Matchless was part of a larger group, Associated Motorcycles, or AMC. Under this umbrella sat several famous names, including AJS, and later even Norton. AMC would become a giant of British motorcycling. When war broke out, the British Army needed motorcycles, tough, reliable machines for dispatch riders. Matchless answered with the G3/L, a 350 cubic centimeter single, and it introduced something that changed motorcycling forever. It was called the teledraulic fork, a telescopic, hydraulically damped front suspension. In 1941, when most bikes still used crude girder forks, this was a genuine breakthrough. Smoother, stronger, and far more capable. Dispatch riders loved it. The G3/L soaked up rough ground, kept running in filthy conditions, and simply refused to quit. Matchless built around 80,000 of these military singles. It became a legend of the war. When peace came, that battle-hardened design became the foundation of everything that followed. Painted gloss black, the ex-military single was among the first new motorcycles offered to British civilians in 1945. Riders wanted more power, so AMC took the tough little 350 and enlarged it. A bigger bore, a longer stroke, a swept volume of 497 cubic centimeters. They called it the G80. Britain's new 500 cubic centimeter single was born. The engine was classically British, a single cylinder, 2 overhead valves worked by push rods. Undersquare, a small bore and a long stroke, which gave it deep, muscular torque low down. Perfect for hard, real-world work. The very first G80s had a rigid frame, no rear suspension at all, just a sprung saddle to cushion the rider. Simple, strong, and utterly dependable. But comfort and capability were about to take a big step forward. In 1949, a new frame arrived with swing-arm rear suspension. Now the G80 had proper suspension at both ends, teledraulic forks up front, a sprung swing arm behind. It transformed how the big single rode. The first shocks were called candlesticks, so thin they held barely 50 cubic centimeters of oil. They weren't very good and they leaked, but AMC kept improving. Next came the better-named jam pot shocks, and eventually Girling units. Here's a quirk of AMC. The G80 had a near-identical twin sold as the AJS Model 18. Same bike, different badge, like Ford and Mercury. The only real mechanical difference was where the magneto was mounted. And the G80 sold brilliantly. Through the 1950s and 60s, it was AMC's biggest seller, outselling even Norton, which the group also owned. The big Matchless single was the backbone of the whole company. On the road, it was everything a British single should be. Comfortable, economical, well-made, and reliable. It wasn't the fastest bike you could buy, but it was one you could trust to run day after day, year after year. But the road bike was only half the story, because in 1951, Matchless created the machine that would make the G80 truly legendary. They added 2 letters to its name, C and S, competition scrambles. The G80 CS was built for one thing, off-road competition. Higher performance cams, larger valves, a tuned engine in a tough tubular steel frame. Stripped down, purposeful, and aimed squarely at a booming new market. That market was America. After the war, off-road racing exploded across the United States. Hare and hounds, scrambles, desert races, enduros. And in the wide, punishing deserts of California, riders wanted the toughest bikes on Earth. The Matchless G80 CS was perfect for it. That high-torque single in a strong frame could handle the merciless pounding of the desert floor, mile after mile of rocks, sand, and brutal impacts, and come back for more. It became one of the bikes to beat. Its main rival was the Triumph Twin, but the big Matchless single had a character all its own, relentless, torquey, and famously, almost impossibly, durable. And that durability has a story. There's a famous rumor about how the G80 CS became so tough. It's said that whenever a frame cracked in competition, Matchless would add 3 pounds of metal to that exact spot, then wait to see where it broke next. And they kept doing it. 3 pounds here, 3 pounds there, reinforcing every weak point that competition revealed, until, eventually, the frame simply stopped breaking. It was durability, earned the hard way, through failure. The result was an almost bulletproof machine. The final G80 CS could weigh around 380 pounds. It was never light, but it was tough. The kind of tough that wins long, savage races of attrition. In the 50s and early 60s, the G80 CS was arguably the bike to beat in American off-road events. Before the lightweight 2-strokes arrived, it was heavy British 4-strokes like this that ruled the desert. It won at home, too. The G80 CS proved dominant in British scrambles, the sport that would soon evolve into motocross. On both sides of the Atlantic, the big Matchless single was a genuine force to be reckoned with. Matchless never stopped developing it. The engine was refined again and again. Better lubrication, tougher internals, more power. The company was determined to keep its single competitive against ever tougher opposition. A major change came in 1956. The engine switched from long stroke to a shorter stroke, larger bore design, and crucially, it became all aluminum alloy with an integral pushrod tunnel. Lighter, cooler running, and more modern. The Americans wanted even more. Desert racers demanded more power to match the bigger Triumph Twins. And the solution came not from the Matchless factory, but from a motorcycle dealer in California named Harry Wilson. Wilson developed a stroker kit that took the 500 cubic centimeter engine out to 600 cubic centimeters. A bigger bore, a longer stroke, more grunt. It worked immediately. He'd sold over 40 kits before Matchless itself took notice of what he'd done. Matchless liked the idea so much they made it official. They created the G80 TCS Typhoon, Typhoon Competition Scrambles, a factory 600 cubic centimeters version built for the desert. And it was a rare, serious, purpose-built weapon. The Typhoon was stripped for battle, often no headlight, no speedometer, aluminum fenders to save weight, a slim tank, a padded seat, and a big Amal racing carburetor. A pure desert racer, and almost all were sold in America. Only around 125 Typhoons were ever built. That rarity, combined with its brutal desert racing purpose, makes it one of the most collectible and sought-after Matchless machines in the world today. As the 60s went on, AMC pooled its resources. From 1964, with the company in financial trouble, the Matchless singles began using parts from Norton, the excellent road holder forks, alloy hubs, and oil pumps. There was even a more specialized competition model, the G85 CS, with a lighter frame and a highly tuned engine. In its final form, it ran extreme compression and produced over 40 horsepower from a single cylinder. That final competition engine was serious. High compression, a racing Amal carburetor, real power. It was so highly strung it could be genuinely difficult to start. This was a British single pushed to its absolute limit. And starting a big matchless single was an art in itself. You had to know the drill: retard the ignition, ease the piston to top dead center, then deliver one strong, smooth, committed kick. Get it wrong, and the bike bit back. But when it fired, there was nothing like it. That big, long-stroke single thumped into life with deep, unhurried explosions, a sound and a feel that riders describe as pure, muscular character, a true British thumper. But the world was changing. In the 1960s, light, nimble two-strokes from makers like Husqvarna arrived. They were far lighter than the heavy British four-strokes, and in the dirt, that lightness was a decisive advantage. Against these new machines, the mighty G80 CS suddenly felt like a heavyweight from another era. Its toughness was undeniable, but in racing, raw durability could no longer make up for all that extra weight. And the company behind it was failing. Despite building well-made, reliable, likable machines, AMC couldn't compete commercially. Sales fell, losses mounted, and by 1966, the great group was heading for collapse. In 1966, Associated Motorcycles went bankrupt. It was taken over and reformed as part of Norton Villiers. The classic matchless G80, after 20 years of production, came to the end of its long and storied life. It was the end of an era. One of Britain's oldest and toughest motorcycle marks, a name that stretched back to 1899, was fading away. The single that had served through war and conquered deserts had run its course. There was a brief revival. In 1987, businessman Les Harris released a new, matchless G80, but this one used an Austrian Rotax engine, disc brakes, and modern suspension. A tribute to the name, but not the original thumper. Today, the classic G80, and especially the G80 CS Scrambler, is treasured. Its combination of genuine racing history, timeless looks, and legendary toughness makes it one of the most beloved British singles of all. The G80 CS has such beautiful, purposeful lines that many ordinary road-going G80s have been converted to CS specification over the years. Genuine, original competition bikes are now rare and highly prized. At auction, a genuine, well-documented G80 CS commands strong money. Collectors want the real thing, the actual desert-proven machines, with their history intact. Each one is a piece of off-road racing heritage, and that legendary toughness is exactly why. This wasn't a delicate, highly strung racer. It was a machine engineered through hard experience to take a beating that would destroy lesser bikes and keep going. Remember where it came from: a wartime dispatch bike built to survive the battlefield. That military DNA, that obsession with reliability and durability, ran right through every G80 that followed. It was tough by birth, and then it proved that toughness in the cruelest arena of all, the American desert. Where heat, rocks, and endless pounding destroyed weaker machines, the big matchless single simply endured. That's how legends are made. What made it so tough? Simplicity, done right. A big, low-stressed single with deep torque, few complex parts, and a frame reinforced until it was nearly indestructible. Honest, rugged engineering, built to last. It represents a whole lost era, the age when heavy British four-stroke singles ruled the dirt, before the two-stroke revolution. The G80 CS was the pinnacle of that age, the toughest of a very tough breed. For the everyday rider, the road-going G80 offered something just as valuable: a big, comfortable, dependable single you could rely on completely. It asked little, and it gave years of faithful, unbreakable service. And it left a technical legacy too. Those telehydraulic forks, pioneered in 1941, helped push British motorcycles away from old girder forks toward the modern telescopic suspension we take for granted today. The matchless G80 is more than a motorcycle. It's a symbol of a certain kind of engineering, unglamorous, honest, and built to endure. A machine that valued toughness over flash and reliability over raw speed. Ask a vintage enthusiast to name Britain's toughest single-cylinder motorcycle, and the matchless G80 will always be near the top. Not for its speed, but for its sheer, stubborn, unbreakable will to keep running. Picture it in its prime, thundering across a scrambles course or a desert flat. That single hammering away, the rider trusting completely that the machine beneath him would not let him down. That trust was the G80's greatest gift. In an age chasing ever more speed and complexity, the G80 stood for something different. Do one thing, and do it superbly well. Be the toughest, most dependable single a rider could own. And at that, it succeeded completely. Many of these bikes are still running today, decades on, still starting with that practiced kick, still thumping down the road. That, more than any race result, is the true measure of just how tough they really were. Road bike or desert racer, the G80 wore its toughness the same way, quietly, without fuss. It didn't need to shout, it simply kept going, long after flashier machines had broken down and been forgotten. From the battlefields of the Second World War to the deserts of California to the vintage shows of today, the matchless single has proven itself over and over across more than 80 years. Few machines can say the same. Matchless in name and reputation, their old slogan promised. And in the case of the G80, that reputation was earned honestly, in war, in the desert, and in decades of faithful service to riders who asked a lot of it. It may not have been the fastest British single. It may not have been the most sophisticated, but when it came to raw, unbreakable toughness, few machines ever built could match the mighty, matchless G80. The matchless G80 stands as one of Britain's toughest single-cylinder motorcycles ever made. A wartime workhorse, a desert champion, and a machine that earned its legend the hardest way possible, by simply refusing to break. From war to the desert to legend. A wartime single, a bulletproof scrambler, and a reputation for toughness that has outlived the company that built it. That is the story of the matchless G80. They added metal until it stopped breaking. They took it to war and to the desert, and it always came home. That's the real story of the matchless G80, Britain's toughest single. A machine that simply refused to quit.